Oh, my darling Helena, sole confidant of my heart. That's not true. But Helena has nothing to do all day except sit on a sofa, look out of a window, and cough into a handkerchief while her mother wrings her hands. So, it is my duty to make her think so. Oh, my pen is broken. The first time I ever cut my own pen was very exciting. Blood everywhere. Dearest Helena. The ball. You ask about the ball. Soon you will be well enough to go to a ball yourself, so I need not be too exhausted in my description then. Oh, my dear Helly, you sent so many questions. Was my card filled? Were the young men very gorgeous? Was we presented to Lady Burnham, of the great mogul of the county? Was there pineapples? Well, my darling, I cannot answer any of your questions, because it is already 8:30, and we have not even left for the ball, though the carriage was to come at 7, with father walking in circles in the hall, calling out, "Girls! Yes!" and mamma running in and out of our rooms, and Ellen was in the middle of dressing my hair, and, as you know, this is the first time I have ever, in my whole life, been important enough to have a maid of my own. Obviously not my own, she belongs to Cordelia too, and it is the first time that anyone, other than mamma or Cordelia, has ever done my hair. So I did not at first think that there was anything much out of the ordinary way, when Ellen, having put the curl papers in on exactly half of my head, suddenly steps back and says, "Oh, Miss Hero, I have been a wicked girl," and throws her pinafore over her head and bursts into tears. Cordelia says, "But Ellen, it does not look so very bad." And Ellen runs out of the room, except she goes full tilt into the doorframe first, then tears off the pinafore and goes bawling down the stairs with her nose all bloody, and then into the drawing room and climbs up to the drawing room window and throws herself into the moat. Yes, we have a moat. It is very picturesque and has got water lilies. No, we do not have a drawbridge. Father says it will be his first improvement. So, father is at the front door with his watch in his hand, waiting for John to bring the carriage around, because, if you have a carriage, you have to have a groom and coachman to see to the horses and the oats and the paintwork and the cushions and the coachman needs a boy to sweep up the stables and blow into the horses' noses and to sit up on the box beside him in splendid livery, so that we can pay calls on grand people, like Lady Burnham, and everyone will think that we are a very bang-up family. And the boy is called Martin, though he isn't really a boy at all, but a great, tall, gangly, silent man with the reddest face I have ever seen. So, the carriage rumbles up to the front door, just as Ellen goes sploosh into the moat. And Martin jumps down from the carriage and runs straight into the water to save her. But he loses his footing and slides down the bank on his bottom into the one spot beside the bridge which is deeper than the rest and disappears altogether. So, father is obliged to rescue them both, which ruins his best silk stockings, while we run downstairs with blankets, and John Coachman sits up on the box, clapping his hands and saying, "Bravo, Captain, it's as good as a play!" Says mother, "Well, Captain Garvey, you must marry them at once, or dismiss them, for Ellen is in a delicate condition, and Martin is responsible, and Ellen says she won't have him, but now she says she will." "Mrs. Garvey," says father, "what on earth makes you think I have the power to marry anybody? You'd better send for the parson at once, or else I shall be forced to turn these two wretches away and whip them down the hedgerows myself." And Martin throws down his blanket and says, "No one shall whip my Ellen." And father shakes his hand. And we say, no, you are not to listen to father, and the vicar is sent for. Oh, and the vicar, we forgot, is Lady Burnham's nephew, and is called Mr. Primrose. And he's very high and mighty. Well, no, he is quite short, and only somewhat mighty, but he is indecently young. I swear, he's of an age with my sister Cordelia. And he dresses extremely fashionable. Of course, he too thought he was on his way to the ball, but he comes because of his Christian duty, and is therefore very peevish. But Portia says, "Oh, Mr. Primrose, you are to think of the woman taken in adultery and cannot please be a bridesmaid." At which he smiles, though I think the woman taken in adultery was a great noodle for doing adultery and for being caught and for barely opening her mouth when they carried her off to stone her to death, goodness sakes. If we are to talk of scriptural womanhood, I much prefer Deborah, the prophetess, or Judith in the Apocrypha, who asks God to make her a liar and then cuts off the head of Holofernes with two great hacks, which is excellent. And I did not really mean to say this aloud. And mother says, "Heaven defend us." And Mr. Primrose looks at me in a most penetrating fashion, which I do not like. Or perhaps I do. Mr. Primrose has taken Ellen and Martin aside to speak to them privately. So, this evening, I suppose we will eventually have a wedding. Or a ball. Or both. Oh, the carriage is back. Ball. Somewhat anxious. Hey-ho. Oh. My dear Helena. A ball is a very exhausting thing. There was pineapples, but they was not to be eaten, merely admired. I said to Father by the supper table, Father, have you ever eaten a pineapple? He says, in the year 3, when I was at Cartagena, I ate nothing but pineapples for a fortnight. This pineapple I would not eat for £100, for it has seen long and meritorious service as a table decoration. For I believe in Lady Burnham's bosom there is continual war between her extravagance and her parsimony. He has forgot that Mr. Primrose is standing at his elbow. This champagne, for example, is absolutely woeful. Mr. Primrose says, have you known my aunt long? And Father positively jerks. The champagne goes everywhere. Long enough, says Father. Now, Lady Burnham is... She is... We looked up Lady Burnham in the peerage. She is about 100 years old and descended directly from William the Conqueror. She is our nearest neighbour, if you do not count any farmers, stewards or parsons, or blacksmiths, wheelwrights, joiners, well-dressers, labourers, gypsies, or just anyone not in the peerage or the navy list. It takes 40 minutes to drive to her front door, of which 30 minutes is spent going up her drive and through her park and around her lake and in between her copses and paddocks and sheepfolds and greenhouses and wildernesses and nurseries of pineapples. But Burnham Hall is a mighty fine house. It is about the same size as Hertfordshire. It was all lit up with chandeliers and torches and bonfires on the lawns, and there was a fine hubbub of talking and laughter and music from the orchestra and the thump of many dancing feet. And Helena, it is a sound which does make your heart go rather fluttery. But as we entered the hall, only 3 hours late, all the musicians put down their fiddles and their oboes and their trumpets and walked off, like men whose minds are fixed on beer. Then all the ladies and gentlemen with any sense went and bagged seats at the supper tables, and the rest of us was all put into a line to go up and be presented to Lady Burnham, who was sat upon a sofa, which was up on a dais 3 steps high, and she was surrounded by nephews and lapdogs and a butler, who asked your name and whispered it into Lady Burnham's ear, and if she was minded, she would say, "So glad to see you, Sir Thomas," so that the people behind you in the queue know who you might be. But if she is not minded, she just gives a little grunt and waves her fan, and you bow and say, "Most happy," and shuffle off, and nobody knows who you are. Father, of course, will have no truck with butlers, so when we're at the head of the line, he says, "Garvey, ma'am, lately of His Majesty's Navy, very grateful, ma'am," in a rather thunderous manner, as if he were on the quarterdeck and Lady Burnham's sofa lodged in the foretop, but he gives a very fine, exuberant bow, which unfortunately sets his wig slipping, so Mamma puts a hand out to steady it, which spoils her curtsy, and Cordelia and I bob and look demure and stare at Lady Burnham's slippers, which are dark green silk, and not very new. Lady Burnham laughs as if we're an amusing family of monkeys and says, voice which makes the onlookers bend like wheat before a gale. "Not a hero, a very great coward, I assure you, but I was at Trafalgar and endeavoured to do my duty."
"Is this all your family?"
"No, ma'am! My eldest son Edmund is second of the Alceste." He sees this means nothing to Lady Burnham, so he says, "My eldest son is a lieutenant in the navy, and my other son, Horatio, is midshipman on the same vessel." Mamma says, "My Portia, your ladyship, my youngest, is at home. She is only 12, and your ladyship will permit me to introduce..." But her ladyship does not permit her. She says,
"Edmund and Horatio and Portia? How very singular! And who are these? Goneril and Regan, I presume."
at which some of the nephews smirk, but most of them look even more vacant than the lapdogs. Mamma manages to whisper, "Miss Cordelia and Miss Hero Garvey."
"What's that?"
says Lady Burnham.
"Hero? Hero? Oh no, Hero is a ninny. Beatrice! Beatrice is always to be preferred. Why did you not call her Beatrice? Very bad."
Utter silence from father and from mamma. Cordelia puts her hand over her mouth in case the slightest squeak should escape. I feel a chill start to creep along my spine, like frost along a bough, and when it reaches the top of my head, I shall have to open my mouth, and so I do, and I hear myself saying, "Your ladyship, I do indeed have a sister called Beatrice, but she cannot have the privilege of meeting your ladyship because she died when she was 4 years old, and I, who can barely remember her, miss her very much, so I leave you to imagine how she is regretted by her parents."
Dear, dear. One child less, one child more. It's all very great nonsense.
At which the nephews, to do them credit, do look rather abashed. And father turns white and growls, "Your servant, ma'am," and stumps off, and we go bob, 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 and scurry after him like so many piglets after a sow into the next room, where father says, "Well done, Hero! You have just sown the seeds of lifelong enmity with the most powerful woman in the county, who holds mortgages against some of our property, and who will doubtless rouse the several slumbering lawsuits which encumber the estate, and who is celebrated for her determination, her avarice, and her malice." Then he claps me on the shoulder and says, "I'm very proud of you." And then, suddenly, there is a row of young men in front of me. Goodness. They're looking at me with peculiar admiration. Some have blue coats, some have grey, some are very gorgeous and fine in scarlet, are officers of the Derbyshires. And in no time, my card is nearly filled, and Cordelia's too. And those who are too behindhand to get to us pay court to Mamma, who is looking extremely lovely for a plain lady with spectacles of over 40. She looks very queenly because of rage and tears, and then, oh, here is Mr. Primrose, who takes my card in his exceptionally clean fingers and lifts it to look it over, and of course it is attached to my wrist, so I have to... And he says, "Very good. If you could save the very last dance, I would be grateful." Even though he is an actual nephew, I do not think he was there when I spoke so bold to Lady B. Oh well, he is gentlemanlike enough. Then, my first partner, who is Mr. Davies of the Marines, leads me to the set. And I think, "Hero, you're about to make a very great fool of yourself," and my heart, previously in my mouth, is now clanging about and bouncing from the inside of one ear to the other until I see, it is a quadrille. It is the Lancers, I dare say, of Caledonians. I dance the very same with my sisters and Mrs. Throop and the next door servants in Mrs. Throop's kitchen in Plymouth, though we had no men except for Horatio, who was only 13 and disappointing in every possible way. But here are about 40 couples of very, very smart people. But at least I know what I'm about, and it will all be very bearable. Programme du bal. Mr. Wilkes.
Lieutenant Fitzgerald. Jazz Hawkins. Ensign Cooper. I swear, Ensign Cooper was not 12 years old. Edward Grant, Esquire. Sir Percival Crisp. Sir Percival Crisp, I don't remember him at all. Charles Denning, Lieutenant. I am sat on a bench in the hall, and Cordelia is asleep on my shoulder. The fiddlers have fled. Half the guests are gone home, and most of the servants are in bed. One candle in 3 is still bravely alight. Grey dawn creeps around the shutters. A blackbird is singing. And 4 or 5 young men are sat on dining chairs around us. They are rather bleary and smell of spirits, but they will not leave us alone. Maybe they think the last one awake will get to keep us? Father is in the next room, but he does not rescue us. He will not interrupt in case we are still having the very slenderest ghost of a good time. I doze too, but I wake up to hear Denning still going on about the peace. 20 years of war, and now suddenly we have this peace. Peace is all very well for ladies and parsons, but I'm a soldier through and through. And my father just stumped up for a commission in Norfolk. They're regulars, and now they are cancelling the war, which is hardly fair. So, and he takes off his sword, squirming most ungainly, lifting the harness over his head, scraping his ear grievously. Surely that does not count. Then he balances the sword with its point on the floor and his forefinger on the pommel, like so. Ow! Then he says, I won't be needing this here. Oh! I catch it, so it does not fall and clatter and wake Cordelia. Don't be an ass, Denning, says his friend Middleton. Take it, beat it into ploughshares, whatever they are. Go on. It's all up with the regulars. My occupation's gone. Damn shame. And he wanders off, quite drunk. Says Mr. Primrose, farewell the plumed troops and the big wars that make ambition virtue. Farewell the spirit-stirring drum, and all quality, pride, pomp, and circumstance. What? Says Denning. What? Oh, why does everything happen to me? His friend Middleton says, allow me, and holds out his hand for the sword. I say, no, thank you. I have always wished for a sword. None of them will dare take it off me. Very well, it is time to go home. And that is what happens at a ball. Your most sincere and loving friend, they do say that this is mightier than that. P.S. Helena, I must make a confession. For the pen in my hand, seems to have the faculty of telling not quite the truth, but more than the truth. The truth of the heart? Oh, I do not know what I'm saying. But perhaps Father was not quite so eloquent, nor Lady Burnham quite so appalling, as my pen has made them. Perhaps it has given them more lustre than they deserve. Or perhaps it has told the truth that one cannot see by ordinary daylight. Whatever I said about Father or Mamma or Ellen or Mr. Primrose, you may believe it or you may not. Oh, but please believe, with the utmost sureness and certainty, that your devoted correspondent, Hero Garvey, was exactly as annoying as she appeared to be. Helena, you write so small. Oh, no. Oh, Helen, do not believe it. Of course we shall meet again. Plymouth is not so very far. Or perhaps it is. It is certainly in Devon, which is somewhere on the larboard quarter, and we are in Norfolk, or Lincolnshire, which is just above the starboard beam, supposing the British Isles to be a ship of the line, sailing due north. Due north. Very well. Plymouth is a fearful long way. But, Helen, we will never forget the people who were kind to us when we were nothing but a parcel of widows and orphans, when father was on the Toulon blockade and we had barely threepence to live on and had to flit with all our belongings in a barrow, and I gave you my heart. Certainly we shall return. Father will want to see the dockyard, and the Alceste will come in, and we shall all come down and meet Edmund and Horatio. Then I will run to your door and embrace you and your dear mamma. Trust that this will be so. Indeed, I think of those days very often. But now, Helena, as I said, now that my pen is inclined to tell more than the truth, I cannot allow it to ever tell less than the truth. So prepare to learn what I cannot confess at the time. That first night, with you and I and Portia all squeezed in your mother's bed, while your mother slept on the sofa, and Mamma and Horatio and Cordelia all bunked down in the kitchen with Augustus. Oh, I was very sorry to hear about Augustus. He was a most faithful friend, and the noblest of dogs. I remember that week when he brought me a fresh rat every morning, laid most tenderly on my pillow. No one since has been so kind to me. Still, when Portia woke you at 2 o'clock with a great deal of screaming, it was not, as I said at the time, because of nightmares. No, Portia's habit, if she awoke in the night, which she did many a time and oft, was to crawl into my bed and cling to my arm and put her mouth in my ear and whisper, "Hero, tell me a story." "Tell me a story, Hero." "Tell me a story." And the story had to feature a little girl named Portia who ran away to sea. And there had to be treasure and broadsides, and also Mr. Pumphrey with the wooden leg from the baker's shop who would toss us a currant bun if we stood in the door and cried, "Abba Bonaparte!" But, of course, I was so tired with all the packing and the fleeing and the pushing the barrow that I fell asleep before Mr. Pumphrey could make his entrance, so to speak. Whereupon, Portia, having my ear so convenient and close, bit it in a very savage manner. So I grabbed her by the hair and thumped her head against the bedpost. That is what caused all the scraping. But banging one's head on a bedpost is no hardship. Whenever I have a headache, I beat my own head against the wall to punish it for giving me a pain, which is not at all effectual, but it is very good morality. Oh, but I meant to say the truth about father.
I did not know this at the time because Mamma did not wish to distress us. It was not simply the requirements of the service that meant Father did not come home for 3 years. No, he did not spend 3 years beating up and down off Toulon, but never a minute of leave. Oh, no. There was a gale, and they was blown off station, and the French came out, and Father set off in chase, and they all got lost and very chewed up by the storm, and Father found himself blown all the way to Italy, or possibly Spain. And 2 French ships with a great many more guns than Father set about him, and one of them he sunk, but the other one shot all his masts away, and his dear ship the Unicorn was run on shore, and some of the men drowned, and the rest was captured, and they locked Father up in a castle at Toulouse for 2 whole years, which was most unfair, as many of the other officers were exchanged quite soon. But because of Father's indomitable courage, he made an escape, and was on the run for 7 days, until one day he attempted to speak French and was immediately recaptured. So, they was not pleased, and back in the chokey he went. But Helen, hear this. When he was exchanged at last, and his feet trod upon English soil, he posted at once from Dover to Plymouth, wearing out whole packets of horses, and he arrived the very day that we came running to you as penniless fugitives. So, of course, we was not at our lodgings, and he never found us at all. And he had to go straight to the Admiralty to be court-martialed, because if you mislay your ship on the iron-bound coast of France, the admirals would very much like to know why there's not too much trouble. But hurrah, they shook his hand and gave him 3 cheers and said he had done very well in the circumstances. And because that booby, Captain Duddleston, had tried to blow his own brains out but shot off his thumbs instead, they said, Captain Garvey, please return at once to the Mediterranean. Poor Mamma. Does it not make you weep? For so long, everything fell together for ill. And now, it has fallen together for good. So it will be for you one day, Helen. I am sure. Then, Father came home at last, and our fortunes changed forever. Yes, we was at Mrs. Throop's, of course you know that, as we went there direct from you. And though I think you never saw Mrs. Throop, you must understand that she was a very kind-hearted creature, despite being ugly, spiteful, and addicted to rum, and very fond of lording it over Mamma, Mamma being so clearly a gentleman's daughter. Now, Garvey, kindly show Mrs. Penwoody into the drawing-room for the fitting. I will be down directly with the bombazine. But still, we had 2 bedrooms and the use of the drawing-room, and a shilling off the rent if Mamma and Cordelia plied their needles aright. Even I was apprenticed to the trade, but was soon relegated to the wash-tub. And if you passed her in the hall, it was evens whether she would beat you about the head with her fan or seize you like a python and cover you in kisses. So, that morning, when I see that Mamma's eyes are redder than ever with peering at stitches by rushlight, I say, "This is not fair. My mother is no seamstress." In fact, Grandfather forbade her all feminine pursuits. He taught her astronomy, navigation, mathematics, and Latin. They called him the Sage of Penzance and laughed at him mightily because he said a woman was equal to a man in every way and would make just as fine a lawyer or doctor or parson as any man. Though it is true that perhaps it did not entirely take, as Mamma cannot count her change twice and come to the same answer. But Father saw her when she was 17 at Admiral Sivright's ball in Gibraltar. He said, "Who is the girl in spectacles standing in the corner reading a book?" Yes, Mamma not only brought a book to a ball, but danced an entire set, not just with the book in her hand, but with her finger in the book to keep her place. Father said, "That is the woman for me." His friends thought he was a very great fool, which shows what fools they were. Anyway, I ran into the hall, and I put 15 shillings into Mrs. Throop's hands. There, now Mamma and Cordy will not have to be sewing 12 hours a day. "Hero, what have you done?" cries Mamma. "Where's all this siller from?" says Mrs. Throop. "I have pawned my brooch." "What? That piece of green glass? They never gave you 15 shillings for that." "It is not green glass. It is Cornish serpentine, set in Cornish gold. My christening pin, from Grandfather to Mamma and from Mamma to me. It is green like the sea,
Green like my heart, ha, says Mrs. Throop. Give your heart away if you will, but do not pop it in jug for 15 shillings. I never heard the like. And she pockets the 15 bobs and marches down the street and comes back with the brooch. And is furious with everyone. Them sheets won't wash themselves. So, in no time, we're all red in the face. Hands are stinging with the lye, and my slippers go squelch at every step. And Helen, when you are better, you must roll up your sleeves and wash some bed linen. It is monstrous fun and very exhausting. So, we are all hard at it, except for Portia, who is hanging from the drawing room window, upside down. Her favourite spot for watching passers-by, which she prefers to work of any kind. When we are rounded up for chores, she is easily missed, as there is nothing of her to be seen but the soles of her feet on the windowsill. The code of the sisterhood forbids us from informing Mamma. It does not, however, forbid us from tipping cold porridge onto Portia's recumbent form. But there is no time for that today, and I am coming downstairs with 24 pillowcases when I hear a scream and a thump and the sash rattling down and someone kicking at the front door. Mamma rushes to the door with a broom in her hand in case it is the bailiffs. But it is only Portia, right way up, who says, "There's a man in a carriage." Mamma goes, "Oh." I say, "You goose, Portia, that's father." "Is it?" says Portia. "Yeah." But Cordelia runs out of the house and leaps into his arms. "Oh!" "Well, darling," says Mamma. "Oh, what has happened to your ear?" "Ah," says father, "shot away by a musket ball. Lucky, wasn't it?" "And did you not think to mention it in your letters?" "Oh, did I not? Must have happened since. Anyway, it is all part of my luck, my dear, my wonderful, newfound luck. Imagine," and he puts Cordelia down, "if it had not been a musket ball and my ear, it could have been a cannonball and my head." Though in that case, I naturally would have written at once. Mamma raises her eyebrows. You have no idea how intimidating that can be. I see that father is with child to kiss her, but he does not dare, so he says, "Who wants to hear the news?" Nobody speaks. "You've heard about Boney?" "No, my dears, Bonaparte is beat! The Russians have chased him all the way to Paris, and he has cried uncle and abdicated the throne, and they have given him Elba." Elba, given him Elba. Is that to say they've given him a good kicking? Elba, off the Tuscan shore, 8 miles by 3. Last week he was Emperor of half of Europe, and today he is Emperor of Elba, and may he relish it. Oh, but that is nothing. Hear me now, hear me. My dears, Cousin Jasper has died. I did not know you had a cousin Jasper, says Mamma. Neither did I, but I did! No, I recollect him from my youth, my extreme youth. He cared for nothing but beetles and hieroglyphics, and curious learning, very curious learning. He has died without issue, without legitimate issue. Quarrelled with all his family, hated them all, and his entire estate has come to me. I am to be Queen of the May, mother, or rather, Lord of the Manor, Squire of Swanton Pilbrick in the county of some excellent county in the east. Meet George Garvey, Captain, Royal Navy, retired. My dears, we have 3,000 a year, a farm, several farms, tenants, a pasture, a woodland, even a windmill, they tell me. And fair reward too for my indisputable merit. And, my dear, for your beauty and patience and kindness. And here father bursts into tears. And Mamma embraces him, kisses him on the lips and also on his missing ear. So, we packed at once and left before supper time, our new life already underway. But, Helena, my darling, you remember, I rushed to your door and pressed my heart into your hands and said, "See, it matches your eyes, my darling. Don't never forget your dear and faithful friend."
Cecilia, Pamela, Belinda, Cecilia, Cecilia. Histories of young ladies. Much can be learned from these, but not everything. Some things are to be known, but never mentioned. But now I have the masterpiece of Aristotle, illustrated. Now, Helena, you remember. One evening, you looked out of your bedroom window over the inn yard at the Royal George, full of bustle as it always was, and you said, "Mamma cannot bear all of these trollops." I said, "My darling, what exactly do you mean by this word, trollops?" And you looked very much ashamed and said, "Oh, I suppose it is these women who dress so very bad?" Not entirely wrong. "And who like to drink with the sailors?" Just so. Then you watched as the tars and trollops paired off and slunk under the awning of Jeroboam's pie shop. Then, when the moon slipped out from under the clouds and shone clear and cold on 4 or 5 white naval bottoms going pumpity-pump, pumpity-pump, you said, "What are they doing?" Said I believe it is a natural proceeding between a man and a woman, about which a young girl is meant to inquire of her mother, but I recommend very strongly that you do not do so just now. And I drew the curtains. Well, I now have a great deal more information. We arrived at Cygnus' house. Is that not a fine name? Cygnus being Latin for swan, hence Cygnus. And cousin Jasper, once upon a time, had a family of swans upon the moat, and they would come to the library window to be fed when he rang a little bell, but when the bell fell silent, they defected to Burnham Hall. Father says we now must call it Duck's End or Garvey's Folly. But, that is all nonsense. No. The moment we passed the gates, and the house came into view, Father jumped down from the carriage and ran up the drive, tossing his hat into the shrubbery. Oh, such a hot day. So dusty on the roads. And we was all absolutely bursting. But alas, we all had to be presented to Mr. Donnelly, the steward, and all the servants had to bow or bob until Mamma said, "How kind, and where are the privies?" "Excellent privies," says Father. "Wonderful. A pig pen, superb. Stables, extensive. Orchard, promising. Hay meadow, needs mowing. Ceilings, outstanding." Then last of all, he walked into the library and... Oh. Richardson, Madame D'Arblay, Johnson, Rabelais, Shakespeare, Homer. And he pulled a grand volume from the shelf and opened it. I'm at his elbow. I peer and rub my eyes, but I see nothing that I can read at all. It is all written in horrid letters, like so many insects marching left and right. "It is ancient Greek," says Father. "What does it say?" says I. "I have no idea." I decide that I shall learn to read Greek. So, while Father seeks the works of Alexander Pope and carries them to a chair and sinks into it, saying, "Oh my goodness, excellent fellow, this Pope," I pull 3 or 4 volumes from the shelf, and they are all written in that same insect alphabet. Now, I shall need a crib, like Mamma's book, of the French tongue adapted to young ladies of a tender age, but for Grecians. And what falls into my hand but the masterpiece of Aristotle, illustrated. Aristotle, was he not a famous Greek? It has all been Englished. This Aristotle shall be my vade mecum to Homer and all the rest. This does not seem very philosophical. It seems to be about midwifery, birthing babies. How a woman may infallibly know if she hath conceived. Here is a lady who has lost all her clothes. The secrets of nature laid bare, the parts and instruments of generation with particular description thereof. It is the secret parts of nature we are to lay open, which we will do with as much modesty as will consort with speaking intelligibly. Well, yes, speak intelligibly if you please, you booby. Modesty can go hang. Oh. Well, Helena, apparently... Oh, wait, this will not do. Helena's mother is sure to cast her eye over any letter that Helen receives. For now, this book should be hid. Hid in plain sight, I think. Am I not a cunning creature? Not cunning enough. The next day I come up for my shawl and I surprise Ellen, who is sat in my chair neglecting her work and reading the masterpiece. So it appears, for she jumps up and turns bright red and says, "Oh, miss!" Then, becoming bold in an instant, says, "Oh, miss, have a care. You do not want your mother finds in that book." I say, "Mamma has borne 7 children. Nothing in that book will be news to her." "You're a pert one," she says. "Ellen," I cry, "oh, to think you've been a reading of old Harry Tottle's book." Harry Tottle. Of course. "My Martin has that book. He has written our names on the inside and the date of our wedding, and when our babe is born, his name shall be written too. You would not think, to look at him, that my Martin was a likely fellow, I mean, in the way of pleasuring a maid, but you would be wrong. Thank you, Ellen." I am not at all well. I'm not ill in my body, just some blood. Nothing really. But just here, I don't know. Since we came to Signa's house, my life has been delightful in every way. I just do not know what I'm living for, and I've brought distress to everybody. This will not do. I have to write cheerful for Helena. My brother Horatio has come home, but my brother Edmund has not. They have made him the commander of the sloop, though he is only a lieutenant, and he tags along behind the squadron, sailing around and around the Isle of Elba to keep Napoleon amused. But Horatio's ship paid off, and he had nowhere to go but home. He has brought his friend Ostegard, who says he is Danish, but speaks English exactly as we do. And as he has no home in Denmark nor anywhere else, he is invited to stay. He is a very dolorous being, and speaks of nothing but his friend Whipple, the senior midshipman. I say, Garvey, it is a great shame that Whipple could not be here. Whipple shared his pudding with me on my birthday. You remember, don't you, Garvey? Garvey, Whipple is a great hand at navigation, is he not? Wasn't it prime when he stowed the goose in the chaplain's cabin? I never knew a midshipman to have so many shirts. Whipple is very particular about his linen, is he not? Garvey, I say to Horatio, my darling, you have been away for 2 years, and I'm sure you have made great strides in your profession, and yet you are as meek and small and stupid as before. I could seize you by the ears and lift you off the ground with no effort whatsoever, and you still cannot read without you trace every word with your finger. It is because they feed us nothing but slops and beat us twice a day. Kindly stop rubbing my fuzz. Horatio sought the bubble reputation in the cannon's mouth, or rather, played the fool during gunnery practice and half his hair was blown off by gunpowder. It is growing back in clumps. It feels rather like rabbit fur and is very pleasant to stroke. As Ostegard loves your friend Whipple so much, why does he not stay with him? It'll be damned wet. Whipple is buried in 40 fathoms, 15 leagues south-southeast of Lizard Point. A block fell on his head and dashed out his brains. Oh, how frightful! Is Ostegard not aware? I think he is. He was right there. The brains was on his shoe. Then Horatio says, and what is the matter with you, sister? You was always happy, and now you are not. I was happy yesterday, and I will be happy tomorrow. No letter from Helen for 3 weeks. But of course she gets tired so quick. Well, so do I now. Walking upstairs is a burden. I have to lean on the wall and pant like a dog in the sun. Oh, I shall tell Helen about the dinners. Now that we are very swell people, we are obliged to have very swell dinners. Father loves to see the table groaning under cousin Jasper's silver. He loves the babel of many conversations and the necessity of opening another 6 of champagne. And he loves to astonish our neighbours with the puddings they have in the navy. Now, Sir Percival, will you be having another slice of drowned baby? Sir Percival says, which is a remark he has found appetite for every occasion. Then, at the end of dinner, when Bryant and the maids bring in the fruit, Father slips from his chair and stands in front of the door, so she cannot escape. She is obliged to stay and curtsy while everyone applauds and bangs on the table. Bryant was once cook to the Earl of Rutland, and would no doubt prefer a mistress who says, Bryant, roast mutton and syllabub for 14 at 6 o'clock, and leaves her to it. But instead, she has a mistress who comes and dips her finger in the gravy, then stands chopping onions next to the kitchen maids. She will have to like it, for Mamma is not going to change. Oh, not all dinners are the same, and not all dinners are nice. Some of the guests are very dull, and some of the gentlemen you do not want to be sitting next to. Sir Percival Crisp. I do not mind Sir Percival. He is the undisputed master of his profession, the prince, the Napoleon, the Caesar of bores, never to be equalled. England should be proud. No other nation could produce so perfect an example. No, it is some of the landed men you must beware of, or the army types. I say, Cordelia, are you quite well? Quite well, she says. I drop my fork under the table, and Colonel Prentice has his ugly great boot on top of her foot, and his hand... I am a student of Aristotle. I can be candid. His hand is between her legs. So I stab his thigh with my fork, and it is amazing how quickly he leaps off. But you cannot stab all the insolent men.
Soon there would be no forks at all. Women have to learn 100 tricks short of that. Cordelia is too polite. I've tried teaching her spitefulness, petulance, backbiting, and malice, but she makes no progress whatsoever. Mamma told Colonel Prentice that he could not return to any house that she was mistress of. Father grumbled, "Why make an enemy of the man?" Says Mamma, "Can this be the fire-breathing Captain Garvey, terror of the French? Our enemy is not in your line." Says Father, "Oh, I have Lady Burnham. She is quite enough for me." Mr. Primrose could not come, but his place was not cleared, and the empty place remained throughout the whole evening. And Ostergaard kept on staring. I am sure he thought Whipple was sat there, all grey and damp, watching the dishes pass with hungry eyes. It is very likely Whipple has come, he is talked of so often. But no, the dead cannot sit at table, they can only stand and watch. It came into my mind that he was standing behind me. You cannot feel their breath on your neck, as they have no breath, but you can feel something. And it came into my mind that he was not alone, that my sister Beatrice was beside him, grown tall, her dark hair hanging down. Oh, consider, if there is such a place as heaven, surely you cannot remain the age you have when you arrive. For one thing, there would be a million nurseries, babies being so fond of dying, and the streets would be encumbered with old folks tottering about and drooling on everyone, and here and there some poor Whipple without his brains. No, if you leave betimes, in heaven you must grow forward to your perfect maturity. Unless you're very old, then you must grow backwards. Hero, what are you doing writing such things to Helena? If there is a heaven, she will be there soon enough, and maybe yourself also. So, there is Ostergaard, right? Staring at Mr. Primrose's seat and ready to jump out of our skins when Father holds up his hand and cries, "Pipe down, you ladies!" And Helen, it was like a tale from a book. We all of us could hear a horse approaching at a gallop. 2 horses. Then shouts outside and boots on the gravel and the manservant running to the door, and in 2 more seconds, Edmund came directly into the dining room, still in his greatcoat brushing the snow from his shoulders, and another young man behind him. Edmund says to Father, but of course to everyone, "Sir, Napoleon has landed on the Golfe Juan. He is marching on Paris, and every man sent to stop him pays homage and joins up behind. I'm come to fetch my brother. And how do you do, Mr. Ostergaard? You also. And Father, I think were we to drive to the Admiralty and you were to beg for a command, they might very well be pleased to." And there was a tremendous sensation, or what passes for one in Norfolk. And Edmund and his companion are urged to take wine and to sit and eat, and we send for the remains of the joint and for potatoes, and everyone is in the highest spirits. Edmund's friend is pointed to Mr. Primrose's seat, and he sits and looks straight across the table into my face and says, "Why, Miss Hero, I believe." And I wish to incline my head graciously and say, "Of whom do I have the pleasure?" But I say nothing at all and look very stupid thus. Because this young man, his skin so brown, his teeth so white, his eyes so dark, his eyelashes so long, his hands, he is so beautiful, and the life within him so radiant that our poor ghosts, they cannot stand it, and they flee forever, and my heart is free again and at once in chains. "Your servant, mademoiselle," he says. "I'm the Chevalier Armand Pierre Marie Philippe Henri d'Iberville et Lorient de la Chasse." "You're a Frenchman!" cries Sir Percival, the most cogent and possibly the longest remark he's ever made. "I'm a Frenchman and an Englishman both," says the young man, "and an officer of the Royal Navy. My mother is English and my father, well, sir, Robespierre cut his head off, so he never saw me, but I'm proud to carry his name.
and to serve King George too.
And he winks at me, laughing because I am still... And he says,
"Did you think such as I could only be found on the stage?"
Says Cordelia, "Well, sir, do you return to your ship at once?"
"No, Miss Garvey. A ship of war cannot be refitted in a trice. Half the men cannot be found, and the officers have melted away, and the carpenters will be creeping over every inch of her. Your brother is all haste, it is true, but we have a few days to spare." Oh.
Oh, do you stop kicking me under the heart there? I'm not going to forget you, I promise. And now, Napoleon is dished for good, and is festooned in chains and bound for some godforsaken rock in the far Atlantic. No, they would not dare put him in chains. And the Chevalier Armand Pierre-Marie Uncle Tom Coverley de la Chasse is made first lieutenant of the Antelope and is gone to Java.
It is a scientific expedition and will not return for 3 years, if at all.
And I am very monstrous fat and kept indoors and wondering just how large a baby can become before it... So, there I was, some weeks later, feeling not quite myself, and I come yawning down to breakfast and there is a conference going on over the lamb chops and scrambled eggs.
"Sir Percival Crisp has made Cordelia an offer!"
I say, "My God, Cordelia, I hope it is an offer to transport himself to Australia at once and never bother you again. That is an offer any woman could accept," says father.
"How extraordinary, your mother said exactly the same thing,"
says mamma. "And unless you truly like him, my dear?"
"Mrs. Garvey," says father, "you told me he has £20,000 a year. For that, he could marry all 3 of my daughters. I would not dare to object,"
says Cordelia. I do not want to marry any gentleman at all. I would prefer someone with a profession, a lawyer or physician or clergyman or even a merchant, someone who makes his way in the world by serving his fellow men, not by serving his family alone."
"My dear, I reverence your feelings. May it be so."
Then he says,
"Do not pine, Cordelia. You have let Sir Percival get away, but what think you of Monsieur de la Chasse? He is a profession, and a very fine one,"
says Cordelia. "The Chevalier did not speak much to me."
"Oh, just as well. An excellent seaman, but they should not let him ashore. No woman is safe."
"Hero, my dear, whatever is the matter?" "Mamma, I feel rather sick." Then Mamma put her hand to my cheek, looked into my eyes, then, very strangely, placed a hand on my belly. "Hero and I need to speak together by ourselves for a while." So, everybody knows. Everybody is very upset with me, including myself. I have been a complete fool, and what is worse, a by-the-book, everyday, old story, run-of-the-mill fool. My folly has no originality at all, and I will have to carry the blazon of it before me until November, when it will pop out and sit on my knee and call me Mama. Father has made a plan. And it is an absolutely atrocious one. As we have no relations in Scotland or further who can hide me for 6 months, we are to give out that I am kept indoors for my health, and that Mamma is expecting, and that come November we will have a new brother or sister. Says Cordelia, "Mamma, I see that you are not too old, but will people believe it of father?"
"What?" says father. "Oh, nothing more natural. The returning warrior subject to an ebullition of animal spirits. Why should they not believe it?"
Says I, "Because the servants know the truth, so it is already talked of in every house in the village, and the next village," says Portia.
"Oh, never mind that. There are things that everybody knows, but that nobody dares speak of. To our faces, at least. Let us hope."
Says Mamma, "Unfortunately, my dear..." "Mamma, are you crying?" Mamma holds up her hand. "Captain Garvey, your plan cannot work, because I am pleased to say that I am in the same condition as Hero." "No, it is not the work of the blasted Chevalier, it is you and your..."
"Animal spirits," says father. "Just so!
Oh! Then, being father, he starts to cry. Oh, this is excellent. This is excellent news. Yes, yes, says Cordelia. But we cannot give out that Mamma is expecting twins, but chooses to birth them 6 weeks apart. Brian, says I, let us tell the truth. Dear Helena, I cannot believe that there are 4 more weeks of this tedious business to go through. And yet, I wish the end of it as far away as possible because, well, the prospect is alarming. Yes, Mamma's borne 7 children and lost only 2, but she herself was always perfectly healthy. Not so, says Cordelia. After baby George, she nearly died. She never told me so. Well, of course she would not. Not what you are expecting. Then why have you told me, Cordy? No, never mind. Do not cry. But actually, I am in wonderful spirits because a wonderful thing has happened just yesterday. Listen, Father sent a message. Could I attend him in the library? But he steps out of the library and sits me on one of the hall chairs. My dear, I congratulate you, he says. At last, a member of my family has done something to please Lady Burnham. Yes, she has heard of your condition and is no doubt spreading the news as widely and swiftly as her extensive acquaintance allows, and she is absolutely delighted. Because it is proof of her cherished opinion that the Garvey family is nothing more than an egregious pack of whores and scoundrels. Well done. You're welcome. And she has written to me. So kind of her to condescend. She gives up her claim to top meadow. She will let us stew in our own juice. And she offers hearty wishes that both you and your bastard die in childbed and remove the stain from the family name. Infamous woman. Even her closest friends do not quite approve. One of them is here now to apologise for her grossness. A young man awaits you in the library. For a wild second, I think it is the Chevalier, but of course, he is far, far away, lost beyond the orbit of the moon. It must be Mr. Primrose. I entered the library. Mr. Primrose is not quite at his ease, twisting his gloves in his hand and from the collar upwards becoming rosier every minute. I hope I see you well, he says. Thank you, Mr. Primrose. I am as well as can be expected. I felt it incumbent upon me to dissociate myself from the vigorous expressions of my aunt. I hope you can forgive, or at least forget, any insults she has aimed at your person. I endeavour to bear them, Mr. Primrose. Of course, I cannot approve your conduct, but is that why you are here, Mr. Primrose? To give me your opinion of my conduct? It would have been politer to allow me to imagine your opinion without bringing it right under my nose. I am justly rebuked, he says. And I am about to apologise for being a hoity-toity miss, when suddenly he takes 2 strides towards me, seizes my hand, and goes down on one knee. Miss Hero, I have always admired you. Nay, from the moment I first saw you, I was entranced. Allow me to offer you my hand in marriage. You have made a dreadful misstep, but you do not deserve, and I do not wish, for you to receive any further punishment. If we are married, I will never criticise you for your past errors, and will do my best to love and support you for the rest of my life. Your child, should it survive, would be mine, and no, Mr. Primrose, surely you cannot. If you take this step, your prospect will be blasted. You will never conciliate your aunt. Let her do her worst. Some prospects will wither, but I care not. I have other prospects and other connections. You will never be poor, far from it. And as the wife of the Reverend Mr. Primrose, no one will dare treat you with anything but respect. They can mutter what they like behind our backs. In 10 years, no one will remember or care. I think we might be very happy. Hero, will you marry me? What is your answer? Mr. Primrose, my answer. No, Mr. Primrose. I thank you from the bottom of my heart for the honour you do me, but no. Firstly, I do not love you. And secondly, says he, and just how do you think you are going to live? And secondly, and I thank you again, because if you had not spoken, this might not have come into my mind. Secondly, I intend to follow my profession. Profession? What? Yeah, a woman cannot have a profession. I think she can. And I intend to follow mine. I might fail utterly, but I will follow it nevertheless. I intend to follow my pen. Was that not well done? Mr. Primrose is an honourable man. He will not blackguard me or spread tales, I'm sure. Still, now he knows that if he misbehaves, I might just put him in a book. Now, house! Oh. This is not like you, Helena. You've barely covered one side. Dear Helena, I still write to you every day. You may think this very foolish, as you have no address, and I can expect no reply. Sometimes I write an entire letter and burn it up in the grate, or I tear it into pieces and strew it among the fallen leaves in the wilderness. Or I seal it up and write a fictitious address and put it in the post so it may take its chances. Forgive me, Helen, I have started to write your life. Here it is. It is the life that you did not get to live. And Helena, in 3 volumes, will perhaps sit among the Camillas and the Cecilias and the Belindas. And I like to think that, although not a morsel of it ever happened, that it will be a truthful book. A truthful book is hard to write. Nobody has done it yet. Oh, do not worry, Helen. It is not an endless sermon. It is not sententious or sentimental or earnest. Oh, no. And it does not teach wisdom or discretion or morality. It is to be fuller of life than life itself. And it is very funny. The truth is sadder than we can bear. But if it never makes you laugh, then it is not the truth.
Oh, there is one more thing. Helen, I am so very sorry that I was not able to tell you this while you were alive. My daughter, my darling, I named her for you. Helena. Beatrice Ruth Armand Garvey de la Chasse. She was so determined to live. Oh, coming, my darling, coming. Oh, there, now you've woken your uncle. Yes, I can nurse my child. I can write my book. I can do both. Goodbye.